Read. Any more?
One more. This is for you.
This is love. Okay. So we have the sheets that we began last week discussing the significance of Yerushalayim. A little bit to scratch the surface. There's so much. We saw the words of the Ramchal in Path of the Just. How the ideal a person should be focused on, and one who is worried about, concerned with the building Yerushalayim and in gathering the exiles, he merits, we saw, divine inspiration in his word. His understanding is more directed to the divine, more infused with proper understanding. He's aligned, he's on the wavelength. If you're on that level, that's what you're worried about, not the stock market or who's winning the baseball or the Super Bowl. But these ideals of the nation of Israel, the land of Israel, the honor of God, as it says in the Ramchal in this first source, that's where you're supposed to be. In order to get to there, we have to understand what Yerushalayim is, what we're missing, by the full building of the temple and the honor of God that is revealed to that. We said the honor of God is the name of God, this ideal of God for all of creation, that good He wishes to bestow, to the elevation of all of mankind, not just the unification, to work as one, but then to receive, to plug into the source that is beyond the limits of this world, to expand the worldliness that we're so used to thinking that it's fixed and finished. There's so much more, and that comes through Yerushalayim, as we'll see. So we saw the second source, how there's the roots, we called it the celestial Yerushalayim above, and the terrestrial Yerushalayim beneath, and to unite them, to connect them. And this is how that connection made by the Jews coming to the land of Israel. We saw, the Rabbi said that I won't come into Yerushalayim above until you enter the Yerushalayim beneath. Now, the building of Yerushalayim underneath, that we're sitting here learning Torah in Yerushalayim, it has universal divine significance. This is like plugging in all of this world, the finite, to something much greater. The bridge to, we said, like the bridge to between space and beyond space. It's like Shabbat is the bridge between time and beyond time. This unbelievable, miraculous phenomenon that God created these links, these bridges that are able to connect worldliness to something much more, the source of all, the source of blessing and goodness. So that we saw last week. Source number 7, in the second sheet, we saw how it literally delineated, halachically, there's ramifications of this holiness of Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, the Temple Mount, the Holy of Holies. It's like this pinpoint definition, so to speak, of where is that bridge? Where is that? How is that connection made between, like I said, worldliness and something much more? We live in the three-dimensional world. This is what we think there is. But how there's something that, again, the Yerushalayim above, the roots, the spiritual foundations, the roots of all, how that's connected to our world. And here in source number 7, we saw last week, we ended up, I think, with the Holy of Holies. That's like the pinpoint of this creation, so to speak, of this connection. The source number 8, which is from the deeper works of Torah, the Zohar. Here it's translated to the Hebrew translation by the Sulam. Maybe I'll just read it to quickly, those that everyone can read it, or how's the Hebrew?
It was, which page is it?
Source number 8, on the second page. You can't even see it. What?
So, yeah, it's a little bit hard to read.
That's on the second page, not that page. Oh, you're on the second page. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, so maybe it says that the spiritual concepts of the godliness and the Knesset Yisrael. Knesset Yisrael, we said, is the rabbis explained the spiritual, the roots, the supernal roots of the nation of Israel. Before it comes down to this world, there were all branches of that tree, so to speak, of those roots. But the roots of the nation of Israel, these throughout history, that is the vehicle through which God's blessing comes to the world in people, just like we said in time, there's Shabbat, in place of Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim. In people, that's the nation of Israel has this created capacity to be this conductor of, call it godliness, of goodness, of truth, of justice that comes to this world. the blessing that comes to the world, like it says to the fathers, the nations will be blessed, all the families of the world will be blessed through you. That's how the blessing comes to the world. That's again not our doing. That's a divine creation. And the that's number 8. And here you'll see it explicitly in the words of our sages. I think I'm not making up all these things. Here, this connection of. So it says how the divine, so to speak, and the Knesset Israel are really one. They're called one when they're together. Line number 6. Come and see. Now the Knesset Israel is in exile. The Jews are in exile. It's as if lo nikra echad, as if God isn't called one. Source number 8. Line number what? Line number 7. It's if God isn't called one. No, God is always one. It's not dependent on our subjective, not his, so to speak. We don't have from his point of view. There's no word definitions, but how it's revealed, how that oneness, how that goodness is really manifested in our world. Like we said last time on the honor of God is diminished or not. That's the honor, his name, how good that his goodness is expressed, and the world reveals and lives that goodness. So the divine is always one, but it says it's if he's not called one. When the Jews are in exile. And when is he called one? So when the Jews leave the exile and come back to their place, then it says, the fulfillment of that verse we say every day, in that day God will be one, his name will be one. It's always the question, God is always one, so what do you mean that day? No, but again, we said the Yud Kei Vav Kei, he, so to speak, is one, and his name is one. Again, the expression of his ideal, of that goodness, of that holiness, of that oneness. When is that? When the Jews come back from the exile and return down to the land, then in that day, God will be one and his name will be one. And one without the other is not called one. Now, this is this is the vehicle that created. This is the vehicle he created. This is a reality, an objective reality, a structural reality of how that oneness comes to the world. The two pieces of metal that conduct electricity, my metaphor that I like. That plastic doesn't conduct. Jews in America, non-Jews in Israel, don't have this capacity to conduct. Two pieces of metal is what God created. The nation of Israel, the land of Israel, that enables this godliness, this goodness, this holiness, this divine energy, this light to come to the world. So that's when the Jews are in Israel, but that's when they're one. At the bottom of it, line number 17. And Yisrael Lamata, when are they called one? When are the Jews called one? There, like I said, we say on Mincha and Shabbat, right, I repeat to you often, that summarizes this context that we pray 2 days ago. Shabbat and Mincha, the high level prayer, we get higher and higher. Mincha is like the Rabbi, the Ravi in this special time. What do we say? Atachad, right in the Shemana and the Amidah. Atachad, Shimcha Chad, Umikam Chayisel Goy Echad Ba'aretz. You are one, and your name is one. You, the transcending, there's no words for it. You're the source of all, beyond all, before all. And your name, your ideal is one, is unification, is harmonious totality of uplifting, connecting to all this. And that is revealed to the nation of Israel who is one. They're this worldly receptacle of one parallel to one. In other words, to receive that oneness is not individual, like the Maral explains, that God does not dwell his name on the individual. The individual is finite, is partial. The whole cannot reveal itself on the partial. The whole is received by a whole unit on this world. What's that? The nation of Israel, Knesset Israel. That's what's called Knesset, Kinus. It's the accumulation of all divine ideals that's concentrated in the soul, this Knesset Israel. And when are the Jews one in this world? And like what the Zohar said, but you'll see it too soon. On that verse that finishes what we say on Minchas, I'll leave it for what it says here. And Israel one, when are they called one? Ba'aretz. When are they called one in the land? Because it says in the end of the verse, right? Jews are one in the land. When the Jews, the second column, when are the Jews called one? Yerushalayim Shalmata. In this Jerusalem, when the Jews are in Yerushalayim, and Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, Nikarim Yisrael Achad. That's when they're called one. Kishem Yoshvim, when they're settling, dwelling in the land of Israel. Where do we learn that out from? Ki Katuv Goy Echad Ba'aretz. One nation in the land. Vadai Ba'aretz, Dahainu Beretz Yisrael Yerushalayim Hen Goy Echad. In the land of Israel and Yerushalayim, more specific, concentrated, then they're called one nation. Ima Hem Nikarim Echad. In it, with it, they're called one. V'lo Keshem Bilvadam, not when they're outside of it. The Jews in Eretz Yisrael, that's the vehicle of expressing, that's when we're one, and then we're now the receptacle of that supernal oneness, if you wish. Because it says, what's the proof, so to speak? How do you learn it out from Goy Echad Ba'aretz? Ki mikamcha Yisrael Goy Echad Hayadai. It would have been enough to say, the verse, who is like your nation one? Like the receptacle of your supernal oneness is revealed through the nation who is one. It doesn't matter where they live. The Jews are this one nation, that conduit, that receives this oneness. It would have been enough to say Goy Echad Hayadai. It would have been enough. So why does it say, Lama Katuv Mikamcha Goy Echad Ba'aretz, in the land, Ela Mishum Shalon Ikru Echad El Ba'aretz, because they're not called one except in the land. B'chibur Im Aretz, connected, linked in this land. Physically, the geographical location on this planet enables this transcending content to come to this world. And then they're like above. This unity, this harmony of the divine, so to speak, and the nation of Israel, the land of Israel. Ashrei Chelkam, she said, lucky, how do you say, Ashrei, praiseworthy is the portion of Israel. Like the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, lucky is the world that has this nation in its midst, that there's something that connects this world to something beyond. Otherwise the world would be in, as we know, like man has is created the image of God. There's a search for the divine, a search for the beyond. How do you get there? How do you bridge it? It's beyond. There's no. So that's why man, the foundation of all the religions, man in search of God tries to make some customs and laws and whatever, try to sacrifice, do something, kill some animals to get to appease the God, whatever. But otherwise, later it turns into a frustration of you can't get to it. So give up the search. It leads to atheism and there's no God. Why are you searching or whatever? Give it up. You see that's a frustrating effort that it can't be fulfilled. So stop searching and live the world the way it is and enjoy and be happy. Why live in frustration? But rather, as we put right in there, that God created the vehicle of how to connect. Like I mentioned last week, that God came down on Sinai. Sinai is the word I wrote on the board, right? Ladder, the gematria of ladder. That God lowered the ladder to this world that enables us to connect. And as it says here explicitly, like so clearly in these few words, that the Jewish people, the land of Israel, that is this ladder that connects for the benefit of all of creation. And more specifically, again, Yerushalayim, as you see, Yerushalayim is like the concentrate, is of the content of Eretz Yisrael. In source number 11, that's why Yerushalayim is called Oro Shel Olam. Right, this song. You don't want me to sing it now. Yerushalayim Oro Shel Olam is the light of the world. The Midrash says. Umihu Ora Shel Yerushalayim. Who is the light of Yerushalayim? In other words, Yerushalayim is the light, this energy, this source, this neshama, this soul. And who is the light? Who is the source of that light of Yerushalayim? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Also, in source number 10, the Tanchuma, it says, that Shlomo was very wise, and he knew this inner structure of the world. He says he knew that Mitzion Michlal Yofi Elokim Ufia, that the perfection of beauty, God has shown forth. The verse in Tehillim. What does that mean? It says Mitzion Nishtachlel Kolam. From Zion, the whole world was perfected. Articles in the Gemara in Yuma, page 54. It says Mitzion Nivra Olam. The world was created from Zion. Not just a physical creation. In other words, Yerushalayim is the roots. That's the foundation. The Maral explains. The center doesn't mean the geographical location, the center, the first. But that is where this centrality, the oneness, this content of divinity breaks into our world. The world that we call the fractured world, the world of separation and multiplicity, variety, the three dimension. There's the roots to that. The roots before it, like the prism, the white light that comes down before it's diffracted. So Shlomo, it says, why is it called Even Shtiya, right, the foundation stone in the Har Bayit? Shemimena hushtat ha'olam. But then it says that Shlomo knew this secret, so to speak, in line number 6. And it says, Hu nata eitz. He planted, natati bahem eitz kol pri. He knew how to plant the trees based on the lines that came out of Yerushalayim. In other words, he knew where everything, even the physical blessing, has its, like the roots in Yerushalayim, and from there are branches that go off. Maybe like in reflexology, they have that picture of the foot. Mm-hmm. They show you if you push here, it's the, kidneys or like whatever. Yeah. Yerushalayim, so Shlomo knew everything emanates from here. Here it's talking even the physical blessing. How so he knew the place to plant that he says let's read here. Line number 4. Shlomo Yada Eza Yigid, what place goes to Kush in Africa, and he planted their pilpulim. But things that grow in Africa, he knew the roots in Yerushalayim, like in this reflexality, the place in Yerushalayim that has that root emanates the blessing that goes to Africa. He knew to plant it in Yerushalayim, and immediately they would give fruits. But now more in the line number 7. Eretz Yisrael is the center of the world. Again, not the geographical center, but the heart. As you'll see in source number 12, in the bottom right. The Zohar says, Liba, Yerushalayim, the Holy of Holies, is the Liba de Kol Alma, the heart of the world. Shetaman Hava Shchinte, for there the Shekhinah dwells. That one we'll get to later. But that's the center, not again a geographical, if you measure, the measurable of a sphere or whatever. But the roots, the heart, that which gives the life, and from that blessing comes out, as we'll see. For it says that Yerushalayim Yeshvel Tavur Aretz. Mimenu Mushtat Kol Olam. All of the world emanates from that. Eretz Yisrael, line number 8. Eretz Yisrael sits in the center of the world. Yerushalayim is the center of Eretz Yisrael. Again, the heart of the heart, the roots, the soul of the soul, the life force. Beit HaMikdash is in the center of Yerushalayim, and the Heichal is in the middle of the Beit HaMikdash, and the Aron is in the middle of the Heichal, and Even Shtiyah is Lifnei Aron. Shemimena Nishtat Olam, like that before. The Even Shtiyah, the foundation stone, like the Gemara Yuma. This is the place from which the world was founded. Hushtat Olam, Even Shtiyah. What do they call it? The
foundation
stone. What do they call it? The dome of the rock. What do they call it? The dome of the rock. That rock. What they call it? The rock. That's the center, the source. Ushlomo Ayachacham, and Shlomo was wise. Shlomo, the Solomon, the king. Amar Shorashima Yotzim, and he saw all the roots, the spiritual reflexology, whatever, the roots that come from to all the world from there, and he planted there all the different fruits and trees from Yerushalayim. Actually, the rabbis asked, I think in the Gemara Pesachim, that so why doesn't Yerushalayim have all those blessings, all those fruits and vegetables? So everything it comes from Yerushalayim. So why doesn't Yerushalayim is abundant with all this multiplicity? The rabbis say that indeed, that if it gave all the fruits that it's supposed to and worthy of giving, then people would go up and say, wow, Yerushalayim, they would come up for the sake of the fruits, the physical blessing. Wow, what amazing fruits, what amazing trees here, what amazing apples and oranges and everything. Orchards. But in the future, when we come back to understand and appreciate what Yerushalayim is, the spiritual center, the spiritual root, the spiritual connection to that which is beyond the usual what we're used to here, even greater blessings, then it'll show it also its physical blessing. Then you understand how you focus on the main thing. But if they would do it now too prematurely, you would misfocus or put your focus on other areas. That's not the center. But the truth is, when you have the spiritual blessing, it comes down to reveals itself in this physical, not just some I don't know, other religions of some spirituality disconnected from this world, either spirituality above or this world. But here they're connected, and the ability to connect them and to show that holiness in this world, like is our goal, right? To be a kingdom, a priesthood, holy nation in this world, physical, and that's through, as we see here, through Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. So we saw the next source number 12, that it's from which the blessing comes out. Before we go to the next page, maybe to see source number 13, if you want to turn it sideways. On the side, the Yerushalmi, the famous source, Yoshua ben Levi says, Yerushalayim abuniyah ke'ir shechur bala yachdav, like the verse in Tehillim 122. I think it's a mistake, it's 127, and 122. Yerushalayim that's above, it's built. Yerushalayim abuniyah, it's built a city that is chubra yachdav, connected. What does that mean? It's connected. The rabbis say, Ir shehu osek kol Yisrael chavirim. Yerushalayim makes everyone unified. Yerushalayim has this connectivity. The Rambam says they're very pleasant with each other. It's the unification of all. That even the people that live in, when you come to Yerushalayim, there's halachic ramifications. It makes everyone a chaver. I don't want to get into the halachic ramifications of it, but you get a different status. When you come to Yerushalayim, you're on a different halachic status of purity. But here they're talking about the unity that brings out this harmony. He's not here today, but Baruch, Baruch. when he tells the story in Shabbat, he was over what he felt when he came to the Kotel. He said his knees collapsed and he started crying because without understanding, he said he just saw it from above. When he came down the steps, they turned and maybe he'll tell you, very emotional, whatever, but explain that that's what the truth is. Yerushalayim, like what you used to say, that's the revealing of the transcending level. That beyond the conscious level, we understand there's a level, what's exposed there is you're now connected to this, again, supernal content of which is not according to the usual understanding. It transcends that, and that's what causes this unity, this harmony of when the Jews get together in Yerushalayim. It makes them all into one. The truth is, that's why I think Rabbi Neria and others explain how when the Jews were separate and divided, we didn't liberate Yerushalayim. In 1948, the army wasn't yet an army. They had the different groups, the Etzel, Lechi, and the Jews were a little bit divided, and we didn't get to Yerushalayim. We didn't merit that level. In 1967, when it was a very strong unity, one army and one nation, very strongly connected, then we had the merit, and it's more fitting to be on the same wavelength of that unity, been able to liberate the two sides of Yerushalayim, like we said, the east and the west. Now we have to liberate and unify the supernal, this terrestrial, and the celestial Yerushalayim. That's our job now. By understanding and learning this, to appreciate what Yerushalayim is, how the spiritual content is revealed. So that's what we said here, that's the blessing. What it says here, the blessing, from there the Shekhinah is, and the place that God chose. So you look on the next sheet, 9, and you turn it sideways again, 16, 17, 18, 21, 19, 20, all these verses that you see. I'll just read you one or two of them in the book from the Tanakh, from the Bible. Yerushalayim ha'ir shechabacharti li l'shum shmi sham. This is the city, God tells us, right? God tells, this is the city that I have chosen to put my name there. And the next one in Malachim Bet also. Yerushalayim, this is the city that I have chosen from all the tribes. Asim et shmi lola. You have it? It starts with 14 on the top. Yeah. The other people have, I think. They got all three. The other ones have. They have three. So here again, over and over again, the verses that Yerushalayim is the city that I have chosen to put my name. This is again a divine creation. It's not a choosing by God. Doesn't mean He chose, like there was different things on the table and He chose one arbitrarily, so to speak. Choosing by God means He made it to be the place that His name dwells. This is the metal I chose to conduct electricity. In other words, He created it with the attributes to be this conductor of my name in the world, the Shekhinah in this world. Over and over again, you see the verses 21, 22, the Malachim, Zechariah, Divrei Yamim. As we know, we say the verse in the morning, Ki b'char Hashem b'tzion, yivad moshav lo, right? In Tehillim 132. From Zion, what does it say? Ki b'char, God chose Zion, the place to Him to dwell. There was a student here years ago, Simcha Viktor, he made a poster. God is a Zionist. He brought different verses, but one of them was this verse. God chose Zion. God is a Zionist. He wrote. Ki b'char Hashem b'tzion. God chose this. This is the place that enables this connection, this blessing to come to the world. Back to the sideways, turn the sheet again. The Rambam, and the laws of the temple, Beit HaBechira, he says how the holiness of Yerushalayim, the Beit HaMikdash and Yerushalayim were sanctified in the first sanctification and also for the future. As opposed to rest of Eretz Yisrael, the first one was canceled when we were, conquered, overruled, and then it returned from then on in the second temple with Ezra, and they're under the Chazakah. But he explains why Yerushalayim is different, that the holiness is eternal, even when it's destroyed. You see in the 5th line there, Lefi shekdushat hamikdash v'Yerushalayim mipnei hashchina. The holiness of Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash, the Rambam calls all of the Mikdash, Yerushalayim, the whole. That all of Yerushalayim he calls the Mikdash. Mipnei hashchina. There, because of the divine holiness, the divine presence. Ushchina ina betela. And the Shechina, in other words, that's from God's point of view, not because we conquered or captured or whatever, and then we lose we're conquered over, so we lost that conquest. However, the Yerushalayim is not dependent on that. That's not some man-made conquest or worthiness. That is a creation of God. That's Mipnei hashchina. And the Shechina is not betel, even when Yerushalayim is, God forbid, destroyed and not built. That is this objective eternal content. It's not from our point of view, from our doing. In source number 15, it says, Kol HaTovot, the Midrash says, all the good and all the blessings and all these consolations that God gives, the future to give to Israel, Eino Ela Mitzion, they're all from Zion. And he gives a whole list here of the things that in the verses, that all these blessings come through Yerushalayim, as you see in source number 20, on the right, as it says, Pinchas says, in the verse in 128 in Tehillim, Yevorech Hashem, God will bless you from Zion. Explicit. Yevorech Hashem Mitzion, my time and Mitzion. Why from Zion? Because there the blessing comes, and he says, Kisham Tziva Hashem et habracha. Again, a verse from Tehillim 133. Kisham, for there God commands, spreads, brings the blessing. Chayem ad olam. And there you see, that's why it means, that's why it says, Yevorech Hashem Mitzion, God will bless you from Zion. Daha mitaman nafki birchan olam chula. From there emanates the blessing to all. As again, the source number 24, in the future, right? The changing of mankind, the changing of the mentality, the orientation of you'll beat your swords into plowshares. Right? I mentioned over and over again, right, that they copied on the wall of the UN. Beat your swords into plowshares. Very nice, happy. Everything. No longer will nation raise a sword against each other. Happy world, beautiful world, even working together. Why hate each other, work against each other? To use your capacity, your blessings, each one to contribute like a symphony orchestra, each one adding and contributing to this totality of oneness and harmony of all. But to change man, to change the hearts of man, not just to write on the wall of the building, but the wall of the hearts of man, that comes how? Through the verses that said they'll come up to Zion and see Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, the way it's built and the way Am Yisrael is living this holy existence of goodness in this world, not the spiritual bunks, but a holy nation. And then it says, right, Ki Mitzion, it said from God, from Zion will go out Torah, and the word of God from Yerushalayim. That's where it emanates. From there it goes to the whole world. Again, not just for us, it's our private. We're chosen to be overall and to destroy all. That gives us the right to do the opposite, the obligation, the responsibility to bring that blessing to all. From here it goes out Torah, the word of God, this word of endless good blessing. All the nations that will be blessed through you. That's again, it's unbelievable responsibility, but that's what Am Yisrael is created, not just we're supposed to be. In other words, it's a nice thing to aspire for, but that's first and foremost, that's the essence of our neshama. That's the inner essence. I bring you, maybe I'll read it. But don't wrote. You never know when you're going to need a wrote. But that's the, how do you say, the DNA, the a priori, what we were created, this divinely created essence. Like I bring you always, what's the verse in Yeshayahu, Mem Gimel Chaf Aleph? Amzu Yitzarti Li Tilati Yisaperu. I created this nation to say my name in the world. There's a created entity, not our doing. It's a nice idea. God created like a metal. He tells a piece of metal, you're the one that conducts. It's not, like our student used to say about last week's parasha, Kedoshim to you. You're supposed to be holy. Rav Kook, son Rav Tziyu the Kook, he used to always repeat that it's two things. It's a blessing and a command. In other words, you are holy. That's your essence. And also you're commanded to live up to it, to appreciate, to know that, to be aware of it, and to live it, to manifest it. But you are already this source of blessing. But again, we have free will. And our responsibility, obligation, is to bring that inner, unbelievable content to fruition, to live it. The Torah and the mitzvot, and living a holy nation, that's what brings it to reality. In other words, but what does it bring to reality? That inner divine, not man content, man-made, but inner divine, absolute, infinite good that comes to the world. When you open the faucet and let this tzinor, you open and let the Ratzon Hashem, this divine will to come. Rav Kook talks here about Rav Yisrael, I won't read it now, but the inner essence of the Jewish people, that inner core of the Jewish soul, is that absolute desire to bring absolute good for all, no limits whatsoever to the quantity of the good, the quantity of those you bestow the good upon, and no limit to the quality of the good you wish to bestow. That inner, that's already the Jewish people, like it says in the Gemara in Yevamot, I think 79, that the three signs of the Jewish people, three simanim, Rachmanim, Baishanim, Gomlei Chasidim, how do you say, merciful, meek, humble, and Gomlei Chasidim, and kindness. That's the essence. And if you know who you are, you should live up to it, express it. Sometimes there are Jews that don't always, not all of us all the time also. We have what to fix, to live up to who we are. But that's who, know thyself. That's why, again, we'll used to quote the verse in Yeshayahu, Nun Aleph, Abitu Sur Chutzavtem. Look at your roots from where you were hewn from, the rock you were hewn from. It's true. Here you come. Look at Avraham Avichem. Look at Avram, your father. He used to go over the Midrashim and Avram, the good, the Chesed, just the total, just to give. I don't want to get too emotional, unfortunately, but this woman that was killed the other day, Tzayla Gez, they said her whole life was just to give, to help others, killed by people that their lives are more to stump, to cut off life. That's who we're up against. We should see the clear who Am Yisrael comes to bring this blessing, and there are those that try to hold up that blessing. It's ironic. What do you mean? They're bringing a blessing to all, to the Arabs. But there's other not approaches, responses when you see someone that is so holy and so good, and someone who's not living on that. So sometimes it causes him jealousy and hatred to get rid of that source of, what do you call it, conscious. Like you put up a high standard, so you think, wow, I could try to emulate that, to be like him. Wow, what a great role model. But the other approach, unfortunately, of those in this world that Cook writes also. But I have a quote of someone else that says it in English. I'll read you. It's the same thing that Rav Kook writes, but anti-Semitism is the universal revenge on the prophets, expressing its resentment for causing it to bear the burden of Jewish prophetic morality on its shoulders. It is as if the world becomes ashamed of itself and attempts to hide its shame by destroying the root cause of its conscience. The British jurist Harry Satcher, I think he also participated in writing the Balfour Declaration. But Cook writes in Arot Yisrael how that Am Yisrael brings life and blessing and good to the world, but the world doesn't like we brought down morality and goodness or whatever, but the world doesn't like he wrote, it doesn't like conscious or whatever. So you try to get rid of that source that makes you feel guilty or not good. But the truth is, what blessing we're coming to bring to all. It's like, and this woman that's emulated this soul of Am Yisrael, just trying to give and bring life and add life. And she was killed, as you know, with the pregnant going to give birth. Usually the baby should be healthy, not so critical condition. But here the blessing that comes from Zion, Torah, the word of God from Yerushalayim. Actually, the joy. It says in the, you ever know what Chok Yisrael is? There's a book, Chok Yisrael, the daily learning of Torah, of all aspects of Torah, from the reading of the Chumash, the Nevi'im, the Halacha, the Musar, Kabbalah, set up by, they say, founded by, based on the Arizal, by Rav Chaim Vital, and the week of Yom Yerushalayim, or this week, you don't happen to have it here, do you? This week of Yom Yerushalayim, on Monday, the reading, the portion that was hundreds of years ago, that was set to read from the Zohar in Bamidbar Kuf Yudchet, is, or says, I'll just misquote, not quoting, quote unquote, it says, it brings, I think, the verse, it says, serve God with joy and serve God with fear. Even to the Simcha, contradiction. So the rabbis say there, in Eretz Yisrael, you serve God with joy. In Chutz La'aretz, you serve out of fear. Which, again, we understand, we have a different level of connection of without this flow of life. It's like without this neshama infusing life by the parts of the body are like being kept artificially, resuscitation, kidney machine, the lung machine. It's always like from underneath. We try to work and we serve and we do because it says what you're supposed to do, but it's not this natural flow of living the Torah as nature. What it says in the future, the Ramban, right, in volume 30, verse 6, in the future the Torah will be natural. It's this natural flow. You don't need a book to tell you. Like it says in Yirmiyahu 31, in the future the Torah will be written inside of you. No longer will one teach his neighbor, you should all know me, from the youngest to the oldest, you all know me. This connection to godliness, which is our inner nature, now we have these, it's concealed, it's hidden, so we can work and have free will to rediscover it, re-reveal who we are. But in the future, it'll come back to the normalcy, getting rid of all these shackles that we work to get rid of. the purification that was so normal that now the neshama flows and drives our whole lives are driven by this inner source of goodness, of holiness. Outside of which, again, we don't have this, the nucleus, so to speak, the electrons go fracture or whatever, and you try to artificially push them into connect, so like the out of fear more, out of, as opposed to the love. But nevertheless, out of joy. But the Zohar goes on there, it says, I saw one guy who was walking in Bavel, I think, and was happy, and this rabbi hits him and says, how can you be happy? So to serve God and happiness is only in Eretz Yisrael. And it says there, Simcha, the service of God, Yerushalayim, in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, the Simcha is, what's the verse? The verse in the prophets, that you'll be joyful in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim. This is where the true joy is. Understanding where you are, what we are, what we're doing here, what is. That's what brings the joy and connection. So also in source number 25, how the verses in Breshit, when Yaakov has the dream, he falls asleep, and he dreams, and he sees the ladder, again this ladder to heaven, where the top of the ladder is in heaven, so to speak, the celestial Jerusalem, and beneath, coming down to this world. And when he wakes up, and he says in the bottom, where I made the letters bigger, he wakes up and says, wow, there really is a God in this place. And as the Kuzari or the Barbanel emphasized, he doesn't say, wow, there really is a God and I connect to God. He says, in this place. Although he recognizes the factor was that he had this revelation is because he's in this special place. And then it says, how awesome is this place? This is no other than the house of God. Again, God, from our point of view, how God dwells and rests and revealed in this world. What I said before, right? This is the gate to heaven. This is the ladder, the gate. I don't know about the stairway to heaven, but this is the ladder. The gate to heaven. There's the book Sharai Orah, the book of Ibn Gatilia, book of Kabbalah, talks about the names of God, and he talks about also the significance of prayer in Eretz Yisrael as opposed to that outside of the land. He gives he compares it to someone far away from the king, the palace, and has to go through all these guards till the prayers get to God, so to speak. Goes through all these barriers and blockages and you say protesters or protagonists or mekatzragim that try to prevent it. And Eretz Yisrael is like in the palace, directly. You're talking directly to the king, like the famous story of Golda Meir, Prime Minister, and she has different phones on her table. And so we also have in America, we have the phone to Russia, to Moscow, or whatever. Why does you have the three phones? One to the red phone is to Moscow, the red phone is to America, and what's this third phone? Well, that's the phone, that's to God. And he said, well, that must be expensive. No, by us it's a local call. Here it's a local call. Here it's direct Shara Shamayim. The prayers are different. Objectively, there's a different, even halachically now, the next source, what the Gemara says in Brachot, is that when you're standing in Chutz La'aretz, you have to direct your heart and your feet and direct toward Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yaakov Emden in his Sidur, introduction to the Sidur, talks about the centrality of Eretz Yisrael, the uniqueness, and he says how it's not enough to point your feet to Eretz Yisrael. He says that's the best you can do. When it's the best you can do, out of onus, out of coercion, you can't get there. So at least point your feet and direct and know this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where my heart is. But if it only works, he says, the onus, under coercion, if you can't be there. But what kind of hypocrisy? But he's saying, next year in Jerusalem, next year when you don't have any intention whatsoever. He says, pointing your feet is the best if you can't be there. But if you can be there, how dare you say that? And he says, what about you? That's about himself. That's a long thing about the centrality of being, how important. He says, what about you? You're living, Yaakov Emden was not in Eretz Yisrael. So he talked. But now these people, again, there were times we couldn't come. All we could do is just point our feet and hope and pray and want at least so your prayers to go up. But anyway, we'll see what the conclusion is. You point your feet and your heart, it says Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael. For it says, like in Shlomo, when they built the temple, you should pray, all the world shall pray through your land. If you're in Eretz Yisrael, you should point towards Yerushalayim. For it says in Malachim, that all the nations, you should pray through that city, the city of God, the God has chosen, as we saw above. This is the place of how worldliness meets godliness, so to speak. If you're standing in Yerushalayim, you should point your heart and your feet also towards the Beit HaMikdash. And everyone should be praying towards the Yerushalayim. So it says in the bottom here, the Mitzvah Kol Yisrael, look, it turns out that all the Jews are pointing their heart to one place, the Talpiot. right? The verse in Shir Hashirim, Talpiot. There's a place in Yerushalayim called Talpiot, right? Talpiot. The rabbis say, what is Talpiot? It's like the two words. Tel, Shekol Piot Ponim. This is the bow. This is the place that all the mouths are turned to. Like I said, this is the place that transcends the conscious level. That this boy felt, whatever, Baruch and others, that some people go to the kotel and I just see an old wall. Another person comes and breaks down and wow, he does tshuva and he says, wow, he feels this inner reality. Like again, this person, Shabbat told us, Baruch. What's the difference? We have, the reality is the same. The objective reality of this holiness, of the Temple Mount even more, but on this side of the kotel, the energy is objective there. This presence of God is objective. How much you feel it subjectively depends on how many of the different conditions or layers that you have blocking you, whatever. But like I said, this person goes and buys a house. So someone gave the example. Someone goes and buys this fancy house on with a great view of the mountains and the sea, the ocean there. And he gets into the house and he says he can't see anything. He goes back to the what do you call the mitavech. The guy who sells houses, the broker, whatever. He says, you promised me a house with a great view and everything. Because it turns out, he says, what? Yeah, but you put all this mud on the windows. Get rid of the mud. The view is there. You just blocked. You have all these blockages that don't let you see it. You go to the kotel, you go to these places. The objective holiness is there. This is the place that God never leaves. The Shekhinah never leaves the Kotel HaMaravi, the western wall. These are objective realities. Why one collapses and his knees collapse and he starts breaking, he's bawling. He started bawling when he got to the kotel itself, even more bawling for minutes. He said 18 minutes. They gave him 20 minutes birthright to see the kotel. 18 minutes, he says he was just breaking down. He couldn't picture it. So why another person just looks at it? Oh, there's an old wall. What is it? I've seen other walls before. So that depends how much mud you have on your windows. But nevertheless, the energy is there. The truth is there. But there's some people that realize this is the place that Chubra Yachdav is connected, the gate between the gate of heaven. So also in Halacha, the Shulchan Aruch writes on the left, or source number 27, that if, again, based on the Gemara, that if you're, wherever you are, in Chutz La'aretz, you should turn your face. The Gemara says turn your heart, your intentions, and your focus. But here also, halachically, practically, I mean, you turn your face, you direct your feet towards Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, towards the Temple Mount, etc. And also the Mishnah Berurah, at the bottom says, Yechaveh libo, put your heart, even if it's impossible if you turn your face negdam. Well, you're already in Yerushalayim, or the Temple Mount. What do you do? Like when they went up to Yerushalayim, when they captured the army, that first time they didn't know which direction. We're on the Temple Mount. So he says you should put in your heart the idea that if you're standing in the temple, that's in Yerushalayim, in the place of Holy of Holies. And this, in other words, the spiritual intention, understanding that the focus should be as if you're in the Temple Mount. But again, all the world is focused. All the world this is the gate of heaven. It says all the prayers rise up in Chutz La'aretz. They don't go up there to Hashem, so to speak. They have to go through the channel. Again, the conduit is not America goes straight to God. Israel, Yashar Kel, straight to God. It goes all the prayers. It says wait till the Jews in Israel prayed, and then all the prayers from the world go up. Again, it's not some physical thing, right? But to this channel of through the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, the prayers here, then all the prayers go up. But again, I just wanted to scratch the surface here. There's 70 names of Yerushalayim, and we mentioned last time, right, that the Yakar brings down just the seeing Yerushalayim, seeing this Temple Mount, just the anyone who just sees that place immediately is dressed with and infused with the Ruach Tara, the spirit of purity and holiness. Just by the seeing it itself, a person acquires totality of fulfillment, completion. And anyone who prays there, this is the Chazal, the Midrash, everyone who prays there in Yerushalayim is if he's praying next to the Kisei HaKavod, the throne above. Why? Because this is Shara Shamayim, this is the gate to heaven. And this is the Petach Patuach Lishma Tefillah. This is the place that is open to hear the prayers. Like we saw in the verse in Bereshit 28. This is the gate to heaven. So again, there's a scratching surface. The time is up, and there's endless. There's books on Yerushalayim and sources. But the joy we should have, after the Sefer Charedim, he has a different book, the collection of the mitzvot, by the limbs, the mitzvot of the arm, the leg. Anyway, Eretz Yisrael says we should be in a constant state of joy, like the Zohar, like only the joy in Eretz Yisrael. But he said we have to be those in Eretz Yisrael have to be in a state of constant joy, or should be, and appreciating what they are, where they are, should be a concentrated joy, fulfilling this commandment of being in the presence of God, connected. So we should all, again, get a part of that and realize what next week, or next week, Monday, we have celebrating the amazing phenomenon of history, reached this point of history, coming back, we said, to the state of Israel, and now to the content, the spiritual place where now this connectivity to God, the 28th of ER, next week, when Rav Kook, like he also notes the yortzeit of Shmuel and Avi, Shmuel the prophet that died in the 28th of ER, and also Rav Kook in 1904, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, the 28th of ER. But nevertheless, this is, again, to appreciate where we are, to have this joy of meriting, and also the responsibility, therefore, to live accordingly, to bring this blessing, to be the conduit, to bring the blessing of good to all of B'ezrat Hashem. And we should finally have a Beit HaMikdash to complete the process, the full expression and revealing of this divine goodness for all of creation, all of mankind, B'ezrat Hashem.